Well, I've been bamboozled again. Let's talk about the bass line to Bolivia. Welcome to Learn Jazz Bass with Matt Rybicki. I'm glad that you're here. I said I was bamboozled about this tune, Bolivia, and that's because I thought the particular bass line that is associated with this tune went a certain way. But there's one very little minute difference that is not exactly what I knew, and I never really even heard it until I listened more carefully. This is a great tune from the awesome Cedar Walton, and it's called very often on gigs and so on, so it's important for us to know. The sort of vamp riff bass line part that the piano matches as well is quite simple, but as I say, I'll point out this little difference. So the basics of this vamp part, riff part, however, interlude part, and we'll discuss that in a second, are very easy. The notes are G natural, E natural, and F natural, and D natural. Very much like all blues, but a little bit different. We're gonna start with open G, and then play this E here, and E natural, I'm sorry, F natural here. And then D, G, E, F. So G, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so it's anticipated to the second bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3. And it's this very fine line, very much mostly straight feel, but it kind of toes the line with a little bit of swing. One thing that makes that a little bit trickier is this little extra part that I realized when I listened to many versions from Cedar himself. And yes, the very beginning 4 measures are just that. D, G. And that's usually how people play it and how I learned it. But what happens in the actual recording and on other versions that they do live and so on and so forth, there is a little bit of an extra thing in what would be bar 3. So 1. Do you hear that's 1 and 2, 3, 1 and 2, 3, and 1 and 2, 3, 4, and very small, but to me a very big difference because gosh, Cedar is playing that too on piano and it happens every time. So and on this recording, when this vamp part at the beginning is an interlude and is part of the form after the statement of the first part of the head, they do play this 1 and the 2 G's in a row. They do play that pretty much every time. So that's the little bamboozle part. Oh my gosh, I thought I knew this tune and I actually don't if you really get into specifics. Minor thing, I hope that it helps you though. So, but then we get into the statement of the melody and there are some hits in here that are a little bit, in a sense, amorphous as to what we are doing on the bass, because what Sam Jones does on the recording, on the original recording, is sort of floating between sometimes walking, sometimes playing the hits, sometimes not. In general, there's a couple places that I notated in the chart itself where generally we are definitely going to play those hits, like in bar 1 of the A, you're going to play that E flat, B flat, A natural. And then I don't have bar numbers on here, but like bar 12, 14, I'm sorry, bar 12 is really another big one. And then 16 is another big one where like that happens all the time. When the rhythmic notation is above the staff, in case you didn't know, that's like the hits are happening, but you don't necessarily have to play them. Perhaps I should have put them in the bar in the very first bar of section A. Perhaps I should have put them in there. You could walk through that though, but it's very clear that Sam is playing the hits in like bars 12 and bar 16, for example. So that's a part of the arrangement of the tune and part of the fun of playing it. And then we go to the interlude, which is this vamp, the way that we started. But it always happens for 16 bars in this particular recording, and that is technically the form. So it's this 16 bars of this A section, and then the B section is this interlude that happens for 16 bars. When you're playing it yourself live, be sure to keep your ears and eyes open, because sometimes folks want to extend that. Or there might be a little bit of confusion. Not everyone might feel as comfortable as you might with the actual 16 bars. Like, when do we get out of the 16 bars? So oftentimes the person who is the leader, or the person who is soloing, the person who is playing the melody, will give some kind of cue, whether it be just a little turn towards the band, or maybe a little head nod, or something that, hey, we're going back to A at this point, just to reassure everybody's on the same page. Or they might give a symbol like, we're just gonna vamp this, we're gonna repeat this over and over again, which, as I say, can happen for drum solos. For example, this is a convenient way to play something under a drum solo. So that would just, the interlude would go on forever, and then there would be a cue back into the head itself. It's also important to notice that in the arrangement itself, it switches between a swing feel and a quote-unquote Latin feel. This sort of partially swung, partially straight thing that happens in bars 5 through, say, 10, 9, 12, something like that. It's very gray. This is the kind of song that we really have to practice and spend time with on our own. It's not something you're going to pick up on a gig. You can't just hear it necessarily unless you're very experienced. The chord changes are not super normal, quote unquote, and the form is a little bit, unusual if you're not used to it. So spend time yourself practicing this, playing along with the recording, figuring out what you want to play. And generally for me, when the head is happening, the melody and where the hits are just dictate what I do. I don't try to make a bunch of extra things happen. Surprisingly also, when I was listening more carefully to this recording, Sam Jones is more busy in places that I usually am not. I usually sort of leave more space, partially because this tune is often done even faster, like, even faster sometimes. And it's really tricky to get those extra eighth notes in that I talked about that were a little bit of an unknown for me. That double open G, one and one and on top of it, because of the anticipated part of the line where it goes 4 and, D and, 4 and, it makes me wanna sort of swing a little bit, but those G's, the one and on the open G, is really, really more straight. So it's hard to sort of shift between straight and swing. Play along, it requires a lot of play on. But when it is at this faster tempo, it's even obviously harder to do that. So I think that's why over time, less people started doing this extra eighth note, because at that faster tempo, it's very hard to get those extra notes in. So I think as the tune became a little faster, we dropped that extra eighth note on the one and, the 2 open G's. We just dropped it because it's harder to execute. On the recording as well, and we should be aware of this as you play it with others, that some folks just want to swing through the whole solo section, including the vamp section, the B section of those 16 bars. So 16 bars of just essentially a G7, a G dominant sound, rather than playing this riff. Some people want to go to the riff. It's just being flexible and being aware of what's possible and shifting on the fly. But as I say, this is repeated so many times, this riff figure, that you will become sick of it. But you'll feel a lot stronger playing it. And as a bonus, if you are, for example, leading the gig, or you want to call a tune on a gig and it's like a background gig or something, if you just start playing this riff, people are generally going to know what you're playing. They're going to think it's either Joshua from Miles Davis or this. It's pretty much the only couple of options. So if I just start playing this, people know what I mean. And when everybody starts to join, that's kind of the beginning of the intro. Someone will give, usually the intro is longer than just 16 bars, and someone will give a cue that the head starts. And as I say, we want to play these hits where we can. As far as walking through these changes, I think it's important to try to understand in the way that you can what this sort of harmony is doing. As I say, it's unusual. I think that's great. And the way I sort of think about it is like the E flat is just, I think of that as just a starting place because it's the first bar. That's really strong for me. And then that bar 2 is essentially a dominant chord that leads to bar 3. So it's sort of getting to the D major 7. And then that A flat 13 or A flat 7 is really leading to the G. So really it's just like I'm thinking about where the resolution parts of the harmony are. So that A flat is just a half step sort of chromatic chord. It's really a tritone substitution, but we're getting to G major. And then it goes to an F sharp dominant, but that is getting to B minor. You see, it's about where that resolution is. The C major 7, I suppose there's most definitely a technical way to analyze that. I think of it as just, this is just a side step movement because it goes back to B minor, right? It goes B minor 7 in bar 7, C major 7, back to B minor. And then that descent to the B minor 7 over A, this means that we play A in the bass, but the chord itself is a B minor 7. It's not 2 chords, it's just how it's voiced. That is part of this longer sort of string. So bars 9 through 12 is really just B to A flat to G, which is this bar 12 is just a 2/5 to F major, right? G minor 7, C, F major. Then the B7, again, I feel is a leading chord going to B flat major. Yeah. And then the A altered, to me, is the strangest part to me. Like, I'm not sure, other than it sounds great, I don't have like necessarily a clinical explanation for it. But that's okay. If you have enough of the broad part of the tune, then you can hopefully take it in. Working out walking on here has some tricky things, and I'd like to do another video about these chords that move in half-step motion because it doesn't necessarily fit with what we generally associate when we're starting to learn how to walk. But I know many of you are semi-pros or even pros, and so you'll have your ways of dealing with it. For those of us that are still at the beginning of our journey, as I say, I'll do another video that will hopefully help to illuminate some of these little movements by half step when the chords move by half step. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that it was helpful. As always, look for a PDF below. Always remember, straight ahead and strive for tone.